All right, this is the review video for Old Testament chronology, quiz number 2, which is going to happen on Thursday. And let me go over first what the quiz is going to look like, and then we'll talk about kind of the stuff that's on the quiz. The first section of the quiz will be a matching section where you'll match different theories that we talked about, creation theories with information about them. The second section is a true and false section. The third section is a short answer section. And then finally, your favorite, an essay question. And so we're going to look at some of the things there for that. Of course, we talked about several different theories that people have had with creation. Most of those theories, of course, trying to make creation or make the Bible agree with evolution. Of course, we don't believe any of these theories. We talked about the gap theory. We mentioned the gap theory is the belief that there were millions of years between Genesis chapter 1 and Genesis chapter 2. We mentioned the fact that gap theory was made popular by two men, George Pember and C.I. Scofield. And of course, if you have a Scofield Bible, the gap theory notes are in that Scofield Bible. We mentioned, of course, that the gap theory basically tried to make Christian, the Bible compatible with evolution. It was based on the idea that, God told Adam to replenish the earth. And of course, we know that that word replenish actually means to fill or to refill. And so we talked about that. We also talked about the day-age theory. And it's kind of like the gap theory, with the exception of the day-age theory believes that each of the days were millions of years. And that's based on two Bible passages, Psalm chapter 90, verse 4, and 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 8, where it talks about the day of the Lord being 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is a day. We mentioned the fact that this theory was made popular by a man named George Faber. And of course, we talked about the fact that those Bible verses really aren't talking about that at all. And even if that's what they were talking about, the verses say thousands of years, not millions of years. And so that doesn't work. And of course, we just briefly mentioned theistic evolution, which of course is simply the belief that God used evolution to create the world. Of course, that's just a fallacy in the fact that, God told us how he created the world. We also talked about a supposed contradiction between Genesis chapter 1, Genesis chapter 2. We talked about people will try to say that, Genesis 2:9 says that plants were created after man. 2:19 says that beasts and fowls were created after man. And, God used different substances for creating fowls. And they try to say that there's two different creation accounts. Well, the truth is we mentioned in class that Genesis chapter 2 deals with the creation of the Garden of Eden. And Genesis chapter 1 deals with the creation of the world. So in Genesis chapter 1, God created the whole world. In Genesis chapter 2, God made a special place for Adam and Eve to live. That was the Garden of Eden. He also created one of everything in front of Adam so that he would know who the Creator really was. After all, Adam was the last thing created. And so he never saw any of the creation until God created it in front of him. Then we talked about the corruption that happened in the world. We talked about the fall of Satan, that it had to be after the creation week. After all, God looked on all of creation at the end and said, it's very good. If Satan had fallen, and Satan is a created being, that wouldn't be a true statement. We mentioned the fact that Satan's sin involved really the core sin of pride. Pride is really at the core of just about anything that we do. And Satan's sin involved pride. We mentioned, of course, that Satan used a snake. And, of course, many people hate snakes today. I think it's kind of probably left over from just the memory from the ancient past there. We mentioned the fact that Satan questioned God's word. He denied God's word. He used the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life on Adam and Eve, especially Eve. We mentioned the fact that the tree of knowledge of good and evil, the Bible doesn't say that it was any nicer or beautiful, more beautiful than any of the other trees. It was a normal tree, just like the rest of them. We were just tempted because it was something we couldn't have. We mentioned the fact that after they ate of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, of course, they sinned, and they tried to cover their sins by making a fig leaf, aprons of fig leaves. And we mentioned that was the first example of man-made religion. Didn't do a very good job covering them. We also talked about the fact that when they were, after they had sinned, they started hiding from God. God began to ask questions. Where are you, Adam? Did you eat of the tree? We mentioned the fact that God does not ask questions in order to get information. He asks questions in order for us to think about what we're doing and where we are. And that was what he did with Adam and Eve. We mentioned different curses. Of course, curse on the man. His work would be full of thorns and thistles, and of course he would die. Curse upon the woman. She would have pain in childbirth, and her husband would rule over her. Curse upon the land. There would be thorns and thistles, and it wouldn't yield its strength. And curse upon the serpent. That he would be cursed above all serpents and crawl on his belly and eat dust. And of course, we mentioned the fact that during the millennium, all the curses will be lifted except for the curse on the serpent. He will eternally be cursed to crawl on his belly and eat dust. And we mentioned that, all right? We mentioned the fact Genesis 3:15, a very important Bible verse to reference to keep note of. It is the first prophecy found in the Bible, also the very first messianic prophecy, and it prophesied about the virgin birth. We mentioned the fact that God had to drive Adam and Eve out of the garden. It doesn't look like they went willingly. And he even put cherubim and a flaming sword to guard the garden. We talked about several things in class. That is a good overview of what it is. I think we've covered most everything that you see in the quiz. Of course, as always, you are responsible for anything that was said in class. But I think if you do well listening to this review, you'll do well in the quiz. We'll see you on Thursday. God bless.